As we jet into the January transfer window, you all know that there will always be lots and lots of stories that are really bubbling as far as who is coming to Man United and who is leaving. I've already brought you a story, I think yesterday night, where United has been linked to very many players, and a story coming in from a United correspondent for the ESPN known as Rob Dawson has come out and confirmed to us that United are really looking out for a huge sweep out for players that are really aged and underperforming players that are really on huge salaries, meaning that they'll be willing to obviously recruit and bring in players to the club of Manchester United that will obviously come in through and obviously take us to the next level. And this is where Klavin Phillips comes into the equation. He's into the conversation, and Sunsport were the first to obviously break this story, and then other journalists have gone ahead obviously coming through and obviously give us what they think about this move, with teams like Juventus putting in a very huge pledge to obviously sign the player. Looks like Man United is also coming in through to do the needful. Guys, how are you? Good afternoon. It's noon in my country, though the weather doesn't look like it's noon, but never say never here onto the United Matters channel, because weather in my country can easily shift to being sunny. So we thank God for the gift of life. The Muslims, Barakallahu fikum, and hope you guys are really having a fantastic stay wherever you are. And let's get started into this fixture. With us knocked out of the Champions League and left in only tournaments to participate in, that is the FA Cup and the Premier League, you anticipate that lots of things are obviously going to be on the cards as far as which players are leaving in the January transfer window and those that are not leaving. And now, one of the positions that we anticipate huge movement, the club of Man United, is the midfield, and players like Donny van de Beek. For him, he's obviously in advanced talks with Frankfurt to see to it that he obviously crosses and goes that side. Then there is a Casemiro. For that, I'm really having lots of questions, and I don't see him really leaving the club of Man United. But I think the departure of the departure of Donny van de Beek leaves a vacuum in that midfield of Man United on who should obviously come in through and do the needful. And this is where this story comes in through, that Manchester United put Manchester City midfielder Klavin Phillips on top of January's shopping list. That was the Sun at first who came in through and obviously gave us this story. And then we got Peter O'Rourke from the Footy Insider confirming to us that Klavin Phillips is highly to leave Man City for Man United, despite reported interest from Erik ten Hag. The midfielder is however likely to leave Etihad on loan with a view to a permanent move. Now, we all know the rivalry between Manchester United and the side of Man City, and this is where the huge question is going to be raised, because for me, if you tell me Klavin Phillips and you're getting him at Man United, I see him as an elite player. I love the way he plays, press resistant. He can play almost in every position in the midfield. He can play the double pivot. He can play as a central attacking midfielder. And I think he's not off to obviously get to where he's supposed to be. I really understand that at Manchester City, he hasn't gone ahead to get a lot of playing time. But trust me, that doesn't deprive him of his qualities as a midfielder. To me, as I told you way back, that by the time they played at England together in the Euros, Klavin Phillips was at Leeds and Declan Rice was at West Ham. Klavin Phillips looked by far a better player than Declan Rice. But when he went in ahead and obviously signed for Pep Guardiola, everyone thought that Klavin Phillips is going to become one of the best midfielders in the world, because he's going to be managed by a manager who was a midfielder. But we are asking, where are the ingredients that Pep Guardiola is going to hate to obviously add on to Klavin Phillips? They are nowhere to be seen. Klavin Phillips is really an excellent player, but looks like they've gone ahead to fail out with the manager of Manchester City, that is Pep Guardiola. And if there is chance for him to come to Man United, I'll take him with open hands, because I know exactly what he offers. He's a very, very good player. Very, very good player. And I think he just really made the wrong move. And one will say, I don't want him at Man United because he went ahead to obviously snub us and went to our rivals, that is Manchester City. Yeah, I understand that, but in the game of football, we've seen the likes of Owen Hargreaves move to Manchester City, Carlos Tevez moving to Manchester City from Man United, So, when such stuff happens, you really understand that players can move to your rivals, but can Man City really give us Klavin Phillips? Because all those two players I've gone ahead to mention that crossed from Manchester United to Manchester City had their contracts run down. That is it. And for a player that we had a contract with and wanted to go to Manchester City, we stopped him. That was Mikel Sylvester. Sir Alex Ferguson went ahead to call Arsene Wenger and told him, how much money can you offer to me in this French international? Because he knew Arsene Wenger idealized very many French players. And guess what Arsene Wenger said? I can get you £750,000 in that player. Ferguson said, all right, it's better for him to go to Arsenal other than going to Manchester City. That is it. So, according to me, all in my own view, in my perspective, I come to realize that this deal is hard to happen because the player is tied on a contract at Manchester City, and teams like Juventus might come in through to put in some huge money to take him, and Manchester City are fond of not selling players to teams that are really showing threat. Right now, one will say, is really Man United showing threat to Manchester City? Yes, because Manchester United is 6 points off Manchester City, and we don't know how the table is going to be looking like at the start of the January transfer window, and Manchester City won't allow that to happen. So, as it stands, it's obviously United in a hard fix. But for Klavin Phillips, I don't see him also wanting to come to Man United. You know the history between Leeds and Man United. The rivalry is huge, and it's a very big game when United is playing Leeds. So, I think he opted to go to Manchester City because he never wanted to obviously annoy the Leeds fans, because the Leeds fans wouldn't have gone ahead to obviously like him when he's playing for their rival, that is Man United. So, Klavin Phillips to Man United is a hot one, but I think it's one of those deals that we cannot do because Manchester City cannot really give us a player on loan to strengthen our midfield, because Pep Guardiola knows the potential of this player. He trains with him on a daily basis, and he knows what Erik ten Hag can get out of him and how he can obviously come into that midfield and become a very steady Eddie player. So he cannot strengthen us. With how tricky and tight this league is, there is no way I see Klavin Phillips coming to Man United. Though I would have gone ahead to love him to come through and play for the club of Man United, there is no way he's coming to Man United. I think they'll take him to Juventus, because I really had the story I did onto my other sister channel as Rokani Media Football, that the Manchester City hierarchy and the intermediaries of Klavin Phillips have gone ahead to obviously meet up the people or the sporting director of Juventus, and they've gone ahead to agree onto certain things, and those things include Klavin Phillips crossing to the side of Juventus, and trust me, I see him playing for Juventus, and Klavin Phillips will be excited to play for Juventus, because Juventus is one of the teams that is competing for the Scudetto, that is the Serie A this season. And after all those years, Klavin Phillips will go to Juventus, because he knows if Juventus finish in the top four, which they're going to do so, they'll play in the Champions League and will be having a very given starting position in that team. Paul-Ebile Pogba is going to be suspended for 4 years. He's out. And even if he was present, Paul Pogba has proven an injury-prone player. And Klavin Phillips will obviously take his skills at that side and will outperform very many midfielders. So, that's what I had for you. Klavin Phillips to Man United is really one of those deals that I don't see happening, but Erik ten Hag is interested in the player, and Manchester City cannot obviously go in and obviously do the needful. But you can also look on the other side that maybe the agent is trying to obviously put his player in the news, such that he obviously sees other contenders coming in to join the race, and see to it that it's very competitive race and his client really gets a job. Because if you want your client to be talked about a lot, link him to Man United and the rest will be history. Even though United is not interested in the player, but it will obviously turn out to be like your player is really one of the famous ones in the world. So may the living to God bless you abundantly. Rokan David remains my name. The Muslim is Barakallahu Fikum. I call upon for your reactions in the comment section below about Klavin Phillips to Man United interest. A sign out for now. See you later. Bye bye.